All right, I'm getting ready to do this again. Hope you all had a great weekend. Let me know who's here as you come in. See a little sign up over there on the chat board or what have you. Man, I'm hot today, baby. I got ripped off by a company. I'm going to have to come after them with a little fraud charge. And I'm a little bit hot right now. So that's okay. We'll work that one out. Anyhow, how are you? Hope I haven't confused you too much with the nature of the assignments and some of the changes in the syllabus. I don't think your class got changed too terribly much compared to my others, but I can tell you that, you know, I'm teaching 4 classes this semester, and it's a lot of work. I'm telling you, because, you know, you have, hey Stephanie, hi. You know, you have a lot of students getting used to the technology, the Wi-Fi issues that I've had, all kinds of stuff. I'll tell you, man, it's been a little bit, it's been a great challenge. You know, I have to say, every semester, it turns out I just love having my human behavior class. I don't know if you've had a chance to start reading the book yet, but whew, I'll tell you what, it gets intense for me to talk about it. Jocelyn, hello. Another Jocelyn, Kristen, Michelle. Hey, what's up? What's up? Some of you have sent me some emails, and I've noticed that I can't open them because some of them have attachments to it, and I can't, if I open it and then don't read it and grade it, then I forget and it gets lost. I'm like, oh, brother Shawn, you have to do something else. So I'm just weeding through that. I did answer a few questions. Hey, honey, great name. I like that. Good seeing you here this evening. If you have by chance fallen behind with any of your work, you know, with it being a much different type of semester, with us being in a live class, but we're not live at all, with us having that kind of scenario, then if you're late, what am I going to do? Get mad about it? No. Why don't we do this? Since can you believe this? Since we're halfway through, I can't believe we're halfway through this semester. Since we're halfway through, let's go ahead and try to get, if you're behind, because the assignments aren't terribly difficult, submit them on Sunday. And what I prefer is if you send them as an attachment within the course messenger system. But if not, you know, you can still send them to, and I'll just put my email up here again. It's shawn.hopeworks@gmail.com. Right. So, hey, Richard, Juliet, hello. So I'll work with you. Don't worry about it. And we've had, you know, I've had some domestic situations take place in some of my classes. There's been some back-end discussions of suicide that you would not know about that I've had indications of. And, you know, I take those things very seriously. And I want to make sure that you all come out of here not just flying, but I want you to be happy. I want you to be, hey Danielle, I want you to be healthy. I want you to have some fun, right? And even though this isn't quite as fun as it is, if it was in real life, because I have a whole lot of energy in real life. Hey, Michelle. So, a couple things. I know that you're anxious to get your grades back, but let me just say that if you've submitted, Aurelia, if you've submitted your work, I can rest pretty well assured that you're going to get an A or B, because I'm not going to be toasting people over a summer semester when we've had a very strange semester anyhow because of structural situations. Hey, Samantha. So given all those kind of factors, given all that's taking place, I certainly want to be fair to you, and I want to make sure that you have a good time. And hopefully, I talked to my supervisor today who said that it's looking like they're going to have live classes in the fall, which, you know, I'm a little shaky on it because, you know, I had 2 strokes this year. I had one in January. I know you can't tell because I'm very lucky I wasn't disfigured or what have you. But I had one in January walking to class. And it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. Hey, Kristen. Hey, Alba. And my lip went numb right here. And Daddy Green, oh, he's not in the picture here. Daddy Green, oh yeah, for real. I'm glad you enjoyed that movie, Freedom Riders. Yes, it's very much like that. Is that what you're doing with the Hope program? That's exactly what I'm trying to do, Michelle. is, you know, we're going to get into some of the more dark things that happened in my lifetime. I know, right? Why are people tripping? I don't get it. You know, I understand it because it takes 11 years to get a PhD, right? And when you have to write a dissertation, which I did, it was 270 pages long. A lot of people feel like, oh yeah, I'm great. I changed my diet, started exercising again, started praying a lot harder. But I got to the hospital within 30 minutes of it starting. And Daddy Green, when I was a little boy, he used to sit me on his lap every night. I was about 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, and he would feed me cheese, and then he would let me eat a banana with him. And he would always tell me these stories. And at one point, I used to feel his face. It was kind of gruffy like mine is right now. And I'll say, you know, Daddy, you know, why is your face so rough? He said, well, I haven't sharpened my straight edge blade razor yet, and I can't cut without sharpening it on the belt. I said, oh, okay. And then I said, didn't you say, thank you, Juliet. Didn't you say that you had, well, let me just sidetrack. The reason why I'm running my own company, and the reason I went back to being a financial services advisor back at Primerica, and the reason I'm writing all these books at the same time, is because of the fact that when I was walking across that soccer field, I didn't want to die on that soccer field on Kendall campus because I hadn't had a chance to say goodbye to my kids. And I was just like, oh man, I can't go down here. I can't go down the soccer field in the back of Miami-Dade College. So I called my boss. I said, you know what? I need to go to the hospital. I'm having a stroke. She said, what? Go to, call EMS. I said, I'm not going to call EMS. I'll just ride the bus over. It's right there, Baptist, right on the Route 104 on the way back. I said, so I'm not going to wait around. So I get there, and at this point, I can't lift my right arm. And, they're saying your face was starting to droop down over here on the right because it had the stroke had gone all the way through the side of my face, and it was up in my brain, and I could feel things happening. And they had said that if I had taught my classes that day, because I was going to my 11 o'clock, then I had one at 1, then I had one at 6:30, 6:40. And they said had I taught all those classes, I definitely would have had a massive stroke. But here's why I bring this up. They couldn't find anything wrong with me, right? They did the brain scan and the CAT scans and all these different scans. They're poking me with stuff, doing my heart check. What do they call it? Ultrasound. They did an ultrasound on my heart. They run all this stuff through my veins. And they said, we can't find anything wrong with you. You're in great shape. And then what did we find out? We found out during the coronavirus that the coronavirus has the impact of having people who are otherwise healthy have a stroke. And I'm like, what? No, man, it can't be. It can't be. It can't be. Because I had the second one in February when they were starting to talk about, the coronavirus in the United States. And I just sat back and said, man, oh man, do you mean to tell me that maybe I got exposed to it? Because I did have 4 students who had it in my Tuesday night class. 4 of them tested positive for coronavirus. And I'm like, what? And of course, I helped them through the semester, and they're all fine now. But, what I discovered is that grades aren't that important. What you come out with up here is what's important. How do you manage your life based upon the information that you learn? And tonight you're going to learn a lot of stuff. Now, there's another video, because I did the same lecture earlier today, but if you watch them both, they're going to be totally different classes. It's just the way my brain kind of functions. So, Daddy Green taught me about the stroke way back, and it ends up, 50 years later, it saved my life. There's just no other way to put it. So when it comes to assignments and tripping, why am I going to trip on whether your assignments are in on time? Because when you take 11 years to get a PhD, right? People say, oh, you're going to water it down if you make it easier for other people. And I'm like, you know what? You're too serious is what your problem is. First of all, most people are not going to remember the majority of the things that they learn in your class or my class or any other class. Because when you graduate with a bachelor's degree, typically, you remember some, probably about 3 to 5% of what you learned along the way. But when you really learn this stuff is when you go to get a master's degree. That's when you learn the concepts. That's when you get it. And then when you go to get the PhD, that's when you learn who said what concepts. And so they make it out to be a big deal. I guess it is. I mean, it's not necessarily easy, but it's not necessarily hard either. All it is showing up every day and turning in your homework. You turn in your homework enough consecutive days, next thing you know, you're going to have a PhD, not a big deal. I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought it was challenging. However, I'm not going to trip on whether or not you submit your stuff, and there's a reason why. All right? When I was in undergraduate school, or even in high school, I'm going to talk about some of the childhood traumas that I experienced growing up, and it was pretty rough. I mean, if you've been reading this book at all, you'll see that it was pretty rough. And then if you got this book, Semicolon, right, my other book, then you would find out that, man, that dude, what's going on? How did he maintain himself? And I maintained myself this way. I had, all the way through my life, I've always had teachers who went out of their way to pick me up when I'm falling down, right? And so I went to this great private school. Oh my God, I've probably talked about it before, but my graduating class, we had 32 people in it. It was called Maumee Valley Country Day School, which is kind of like Riviera, Gelliver, those kind of schools. And we had 32 people graduate. 10 of the 32 went to Ivy League schools. So, Product Product went to Yale, where he was valedictorian. And then when he graduated there, he was a valedictorian at his Harvard Medical School. Smart dude, right? So I'm sitting here comparing myself to him. I've always had this inferiority complex because I went to school with the smartest people I've ever met, and I'm just doing average. And I'm looking around, I'm saying, what? Harvard? And then Sexum, the second smartest person I've ever met, he went off to Williams, and then Jamie went to William and Mary, and then Judy went to Princeton, and Eric, my best friend, he went to Columbia, and it was just like all the Ivy League schools were lit up. And so I thought I had failed when I went to Denison, and ended up I went to the 50th best school in the country, and I just, my mindset was that I'm not doing all that well. But what I learned was, okay, we're actually going to talk a lot about murder tonight, but one of the greatest predictors of murder is called childhood trauma, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But childhood trauma is comprised of 10 factors. There's physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse. Then there's poverty, sexual abuse, incarcerated parent, addicted parent to either drugs or alcohol, and then their history of dealing with abuse, etc. Suicidal parent and all that stuff. So when I take a look at my life, and I laugh at it, I guess it's not too funny, and we're going to get into some of the stories here later on, but I had 7 of the predictors. They say 12% of the nation has 4, right? And it has such an impact on life outcomes that we never look at when we're looking at homicide, when we're looking at suicide. We're not looking at those childhood traumas as predictors of what might happen later. Only about 33% of Americans have 0 predictors. So everyone has something in their background. 2/3 of us do. Well, it just so happens I had 7, right? I had a father who was incarcerated. He was an alcoholic. He committed suicide. A mother who was alcoholic. She was grossly abused as a little girl by her alcoholic, drug-addicted mother, my grandmother, who was ruthlessly abusive to my mother and my uncle. She engaged in incest with my uncle because when my grandfather left her, she had this void, so she sexually aggrieved my uncle. And my mom had to listen, and then she'd get beaten, and if they had company over and they spoke, they were going to get beaten, right? If they cleaned the house and there was a speck of dust somewhere, they got beaten. There's always going to be dust. So my mom got beaten every day of her life, and the care that she could have had was beaten right out of her. So I had, the addicted family line. I grew up in a violent neighborhood. The house was exceptionally violent. Psychologically I was abused, emotionally, physically at times, not every day, but enough that when it did happen, I went to the hospital on 5 separate occasions, right? And when I was 15, my mother tried to murder me. Oh, I'm going to tell that story later, but that thing was crazy. I was hospitalized when I was 8, again when I was 10, and it was just, it's just one of those things where when you have that going on, my emphasis isn't school. I'm not thinking about school, you know what I'm saying? I'm thinking about 3 things. I'm thinking about my friends, hanging out with my friends, getting out of the house whenever I can, staying with Mama Green whenever I can. I'm thinking about sports, and I'm thinking about not shutting off, because when I was in second grade, I went through this period where it was so ferocious, it was so scary, that because Irma Jean and my mom fought every single day. If I wasn't at Bertha's house, Mama Green's house, they were fighting. Oh my God. And so what happened was, I'm just a little kid, man. I mean, I was tiny. I was the shortest kid around. I was a runt, and I finally grew later. But I'd witness these incredible fights, and sometimes they were physical. Usually they were verbal. And what happened is I had to shut it down, right? I mean, I had to literally turn off my brain so that I could cope with what I was witnessing. And, you know, I saw guns pulled on people. Mama Green shot at some guy at a dinner party. She deliberately missed him. I mean, she was just trying to scare him. But, you know, everyone in the house goes running away. She said, come on back, everybody. It's over. The show is over. Get back and let's put on some music, baby. That was me. Put on some music, baby, so we can dance. And that's how it was, right? Here comes a knife. Here comes a gun. Boom, done, fight over. Keep on moving forward. And so I was scared. Right? It was a scary situation. And when I was going to school, what would happen was, in second grade, I would talk about my black family. And on paper, I'm an only child, right? I'm a white dude, only child. And so I'd go to class, and I'd walk out of class and go into the library and read Curious George. And the teachers didn't know what was going on psychologically. So they did a battery of tests, because back in the 70s, you didn't have to ask the parents for testing purposes. You just tested them. And so the results came back, and they called my mom in. Miss Schwaner, we need to speak to you. She comes in. Oh, God. Could they have at least given me a warning so I could have been prepared for what was going to come? So they tell her, well, we believe that Shawn's developing a dissociative personality disorder. You know, he's hallucinating this entire family that doesn't exist. And he has such great detail with every single person in the house that they live in. And we think that he has developed some significant psychological disorder. And my mom was like, no, that's Mama Green. That he believes that's his family because he's there more often than he is with me, because he's only with me on weekends when I don't have to work at night. She said, otherwise, Bertha helps me out and all this kind of stuff. And that was fine. She explained that away, but whew, she couldn't explain why I was having blackouts. And I was going out to the bookstore or the library having blackouts. Oh, brother. So when the meeting was over with Mrs. Coffin, we're walking down the hallway, heading back to the car, and I knew I was in trouble. Oh, my God. So she looks at me and she said, how dare you humiliate me like this in front of these teachers? I was like, okay, I didn't do it on purpose. If I'm blacking out, I'm blacking out. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to cause you problems. We get in the car. She said, wait till we get home. I was like, uh-oh. And I knew it was going to be a bad day. And I got home, and you can read about it in the book. She takes me like a baseball bat, and she swings me face first, pow, right into the refrigerator, and then she body slams me on the stove. And she starts whacking away, and I'm blocking it as best I can. I ended up in the hospital. And I got taken away from her for months. And I stayed at Mama Green's house. I don't know if it was 3 months, 6 months, or whatever it was. And what happened was, every day my mom would have to drive by Mama Green's house to go home. And every single day I'd wave to her, and I would say, Mom, why doesn't my mom want to come see me? Why doesn't she care for me? Why doesn't she like me? And she was always like, baby, she does love you. Your mother, she loves you, she likes you, but she can't care. She doesn't know how to care because, you know, her mother was so bad to her. And I said, really? She said, yeah, she loves you, she cares. And then she told me this thing that was, when you think about isolating or how to go up against these kind of barriers, because these psychological forces are so strong, she would every single day she would say, baby, you have $1 million personality. Never let anyone take that away from you. Never. I don't care if it's your mother, if you get married or whatever. Never, never let someone take your personality. I said, okay. The reason why I'm telling you these stories is because, and in real life, I get on, I'm moving around and stuff like that, and doing all this kind of stuff. So anyhow, so how'd it go? Oh, so the teachers at my school, they always knew that there was something going on, but they could never quite figure out what it was. And gosh, I'm doing the whole lecture backwards, and I was supposed to the other way around, but whatever. So in 1981, when my mother tried to kill me, and it was so freaking bizarre, it was dumb. I had shrugged my shoulders. Irma Jean had promised to buy me a pizza from Gino's Pizza. And at this time, my mom was dating my future stepfather, and he was spreading rumors all through the east side, East Toledo, that I was gay, that I was afraid of women and all these kind of things, because I wasn't dating girls the way my stepbrother was. My stepbrother's 6'3", blonde curly hair, blue eyes, smooth looking dude, right? I got acne over here, average looking guy, pretty funny. A lot of girls liked me back then. I mean, I was always being asked out, but I was like, nah. But, oh, jeez. Okay. So, Irma Jean, now I'm coming back to where I was supposed to start. Don't worry, I'm coming back to it, all right? So, Irma Jean, because there was so much teenage pregnancy in my neighborhood, oh my God, there was sexual assault everywhere. My neighbor to the left went to prison for sodomizing his son. The reverend next door to me, he ended up getting charged with child molestation. My best friend was raped by his brother, then his brother raped his sister, and then he brought his best friend in and they raped him, and then they started raping his sister, and it was just like crazy, right? So you go to the playground and you're hearing about like Mary, who's been locked up in her house, and she's not allowed to come out. She's only allowed to sit in her closet when she comes home from school, and when she went to school, her dad was in the hallway. I mean, complete trap, right? So she comes out very promiscuous. You know, when I was 8, 9 years old, 3 guys at the factory, because when I had to walk to Mama Green's house, at the end of my street, Utah Street, I had to turn right to go over to Mama Green's house and walk on the railroad tracks. And this one day, man, these guys, they came home, they were fishing, right? And they had their fishing poles and all this kind of stuff. And while they were walking home, while I was walking to Mama Green's house, I stopped at the factory because I didn't know, obviously they had been drinking. They're about 16, 17 years old. I'm about 8. I got a little bag of Fritos on me. I'm carrying my Fritos to Mama Green's house that my mom had bought me. And just as I think I'm safe and I look, all of a sudden, no big thing. Then all of a sudden, this beer bottle flies over my head and it lands in the middle of the street, and I'm doing like this. I said, what the? And in that instant, these 3 guys, they surround me and they throw me up against the wall, right? And they said, what are you doing, kid? What are you doing? I said, just walking over my babysitter's house. What's that in your hand? I said, it's Fritos, man, it's Fritos. Well, give us those Fritos. I said, no, man. So I'm not giving you my Fritos. They said, why not? Are you crazy? I said, no, I'm not crazy. If I give you these Fritos, my mother's going to beat me, and I'm not going to get beaten by my mother. And then all of a sudden, the dude in the middle, he had a pock face, and he was like uncut, and his breath was smelling like beer, his eyes were bloodshot, his hair was unkept, and he's looking at me, he said, you mean she'll beat you like this? And he comes in with a punch, boom, pop, hits me right in the chest. I'm a little kid, man, I'm up against the wall. Next thing you know, all of them, they're all hitting me on the sides, right? And he's hitting me in the chest, and I'm blocking my face with the Fritos and all this kind of stuff, and they're hitting me in my ribs, and next thing I know, this guy's urinating on my left leg, and I'm like, oh my God. They were just regular. If it was chili cheese, I probably would have had to shoot them. You know what I'm saying? Barbecue. No, it's just old school original. So get out of here, Willie. You're not even in this class. So while they're punching me, this one guy starts to urinate on my leg, and I'm like, what the? And I look over. I'm like, what are you doing? And then the other guy who's on this side of me, well, my right side, he starts pushing my head down, and this other guy in the middle, pock face, he's exposed, so they're about to sodomize me right here at this factory. And I'm like, I'm fighting with everything I have, I'm pulling up, because when we played football at the playground, me and Booney, another 8-year-old, we played with the big kids. We always played with the high schoolers, so we were used to getting beat up. Man, you play tackle football on the street, who does that? So we play tackle football on the street, we play running up the hill, 8 guys on top of the hill throwing one football down to you, and you got to run up for a touchdown up the hill while they're coming down. Please, if you got tackled under the alleyway, we got tackled on the sidewalks. Every once in a while, you get hit hard enough and fall back against a tree. Oh, that's how we used to play. So these guys are hitting me, and I'm able to absorb it. It hurt, right? It hurt, but I would not let them push me down. I swear to God, right then and there, here comes the ice cream truck. I said, look, ice cream. And the guys looked, and I took the Fritos, and I hit the main dude right in the face, right? I hit him in the face, and then I ran over to the ice cream truck, and hey, Stephanie, and those guys ran away. Now, for me, here's what my reflection is, right? Is that they had found a girl in the woods back behind the factory, about a block or so away. She had been, raped and killed. We had a friend named Cricket. Cricket, when we were about 10 or 11 years old, she was murdered in a brutal way. She was decapitated. She was where they cut off all your limbs, just completely annihilated, and it shook us, right? And now I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, is this? Oh man, look at that, Deanna. You better go get some ice cream. You better go get some ice cream. That's all I got to say. I like the orange push-up, so, have one in dedication to the old man here. So anyhow, I go to Mama Green's house, and she said, what's wrong with your pants? I said, yeah, how ironic is that? I haven't even seen an ice cream truck in 5 years. So I go in the house, I tell her what happened. She grabs her gun. Well, she has me go grab her gun. Her gun is called Black Beauty. And I go grab Black Beauty in the purse, and we go in the car, and we drive over to where everything had happened at the factory. Hey, Roxanne, go over to where the factory was, and she pulls the gun out, and of course the guys are gone, right? And she had the whole thing cocked. She was ready to take some people out. And so all my life, I've reflected back on that moment, and in that moment, I realized, it could have been my end. We don't know. And I had another run-in like that. It was pretty regular for me back in those days. But I said, you know what? I could have been killed. Definitely sexually assaulted. Or they could have been killed. And this guy is drinking somewhere, not knowing that his fate almost passed away. Hey, Roxanne. So, that took place. And the reason why I say it is this. This is the reason why I start the day off with these stories. This is kind of bizarre, right? It doesn't even tie into the class. Because when I went to school, do you really think I could focus on what was going on in classes? The only thing that helped me disappear was sports. So I played sports religiously. And I was the smallest kid, but let me tell you what, I was the most ruthless kid. I practiced baseball 8 hours a day. Basketball, oh my God, I just wouldn't stop. And I was actually extremely good at both sports, and was really good at football. I could catch the ball. I mean, I had crazy moves. I mean, it was just, you can't tell by me walking now, but back in those days, me and Booney were the young kids. We were the only two that were allowed to play with the older kids because we had such competitive nature and everything else. So, you really think I could concentrate at school? You really think that when I went to school, my primary concern was whether or not I did a great job on this paper? Was I really worried about if I got all the questions right in math? Shoot, I used to get beat up because I played the violin. I'd come home, get off the school bus, and get chased and beat down because I played a violin and I lived in an inner city neighborhood. So I had to quit the violin, right? So for me, every day was really a challenge. It was really a challenge. And the teachers at school, I can't say they didn't play me favorites, but they definitely tried to accommodate. And when my mom tried to kill me in high school, that's when a lot of the secrets came out because over that pizza, I said, Irma Jean, everyone's forgetting that I exist. My mom is trying to impress my future stepfather and her kids. They're talking about me. I'm disappearing from all the equations. The only thing I have left right now is Mama Green and Mommy Valley. And you forgot a pizza. You've been promising me a pizza for 3-4 weeks. And I was just excited. So it was Halloween, 1981. And so, hold on a second. And so I shrugged my shoulders. I did like this. My mom peels out. She leaves. And when she leaves, I go in the house. I said, Ma, to Mama Green, I said, Ma, I'm in trouble. I think I better go home. I said, okay. She said, all right, because I was going to pass out candy with her. So I get home and I say, hey, can I have one of those lollipops? Can I have a sucker? Shawn, I've never what's she saying? Shawn, I have never kept anything from you. You've always got what you wanted. I said, oh, never mind. I don't want. I'm just going to go back to my room. I'm cool. And the craziest thing that night was when trick-or-treating was over, see, oh my God, I'm not even going to talk about any of this stuff. Okay, so when trick-or-treating was over, my mom, Irma Jean, Kenny, my mom's boyfriend, 3 or 4 people he worked with. It was Crooks, Dalton, Dietrich, and Brock. They're all sitting around the table in the living room. And because I used to get beaten enough, what I would do, and I was scared, I thought someone was going to break in the house, so I took all my play games like Monopoly and Yahtzee and all those games, and I made a wall underneath my bed. And what I would do is I'd practice rolling off the bed between the mattress and the wall without moving my cover. So if someone broke in, I didn't want them to see that I had moved and I was hiding under the bed. So I used to practice. You can't roll towards the wall. You got to roll up, under, and around and slide. Okay. So I used to practice this roll and hide, and you couldn't find me because the games were there. And so I used to practice, and then one day I was in trouble, and so I put my ear down to the heating vent because I could hear everything going on in any part of the house with the heat through the vent. And they took a freaking vote. My mom says, "What do you think? Should I beat him or talk to him?" Right? So you got 8 adults sitting at this table, and it was near unanimous. It was 7-1. Jack Crook said, "No, you can't beat him. That kid has a light. You can't beat that light out of that kid." And so, well, she decided, and that when everybody left, I was ready for it, and nothing happened. So the next morning at 5:32 a.m., my mom took the lamp off my dresser. She broke the lamp over the back of my head, jumped on the blanket so I couldn't move my arm, and she just starts pummeling me, right? Just pummeling, boom, 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 boom. I want my teeth back. So she's trying to knock my teeth out because I had braces, and she felt like she had spent $3,000 in my mouth. I couldn't be respectful. She wanted the money back. So I said, "Oh, God." And as it turned out, as the beating went on, it wasn't about the pizza at all. It was about me accepting Kenny as my stepfather. And I'm sitting here saying he's spreading nasty rumors about me all over town, right? So it goes on for about an hour and a half. Irma Jean is upstairs listening. I never forgave her for that. I should have. I should probably forgive her. I love her, but I didn't know how she could sit there knowing that I was getting pummeled. And when my mom, I won't tell you the whole story, but my mom went to scratch the shirt off of my back. And when she scratched the shirt off my back, she ripped the shirt off, and she left channels of blood, or of scars, right down the middle of my back. And it went on for about an hour and a half, and she finally, well, what happened was she was going to force me to walk on these thumbtacks that were on the floor in my bedroom. And so I stepped on one of the tacks, and when I did, it got, inserted into my heel. So I spun back to my left like I was doing a pivot move in basketball. And I balled up my fist, and I looked my mom dead in the eye. I said, "If you make me walk on those tacks, someone's going to die in this house today. I don't know if it's going to be you or if it's going to be me, but someone's life is going to end." And she got up, she walked out, she said a few profanities, slammed the door, said, "This house better be clean when I get home." So, here's what happened. So as it turns out, I lay down on the floor, and I'm sitting here saying to myself, what kind of value can I have in this world if my mother doesn't want me to be alive? I said, I can't be worth anything. So I start toying with the idea of ending my own life because I didn't have any worth, any value. And as it turned out, as I was laying there, I said, "Well, just call Mama. Just call Mama." So I call Mama Green. She comes to the house, and she's got Black Beauty with her. She walks in the kitchen, and she falls to the floor. "Oh, Lord, not my baby. This can't be happening to my baby." And I'm like, "It's okay, Ma." She said, "I'm going to kill her." For years, her family was afraid that she was going to kill my mother in protection of me. And she never did. And my mom ended up she's a fantastic mom. She's hilarious. She's actually very loving. I love my mom. When she died, we were best friends, the whole nine. But the contact with Irma Jean was so Victorian that I wouldn't date girls. That's why I didn't date them, because Jean was like, "You get them pregnant. If you get them pregnant, your life is going to come to a screeching halt. They'll get in your way." Over, on and on and on. And so I didn't date. I had a lot of people who wanted to date and stuff, and I was like, "Nah, man, I'm cool. I just want to play baseball. I just want to play for the Reds." So all these things were converging at the same point. And Mama Green, when my mom came home that day, my mom walked in the kitchen door, And Mama Green walked right up to her with the gun, and she said, "Susie, if you ever touch him again, I will kill you." Baby, let's go. So we walk out of the house, we go back to her house. Next day I go to school, and my advisor, his name is Al Gepping. So I go, "Al, I got a problem." He said, "What is it, Shawnee?" I said, "I can't go to gym class. I can't play sports right now because I can't change my clothes." He's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Here, look." So I take my shirt off, and there's all these gouges down my back. I said, "My mom, she beat me really bad." And he goes, "Okay, I'll adopt you as my own." I'm like, "Al, you don't need to adopt me." I said, I just need someone to talk to. I'll handle everything." And so he said, "Shawnee, if you ever want to live with me, you can." I said, "All right, okay." So what he did is he went into called a special emergency faculty meeting, and they met to determine how they were going to process me through the school, because they weren't going to let me leave because the school was such a great buffer for me from all the violence and things like that. So as it turned out, they softened the workload. I had to still do the same work. I mean, it's not like it was given to me. But they gave me accommodations. They gave me alternatives. Like instead of doing a written exam, they gave me an oral one where I could speak one-on-one. If I, like in math, I had a test, and I had an exam one time in math, and Mrs. Schwartz was the teacher, and she puts the exam down in front of me, right? And I'm looking, and I started laughing out loud. I'm looking at all the other kids in the class. I'm like, "What is this?" She goes, "What's wrong, Sean?" I said, what is this?" She goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Why did you give me a blank exam? Everyone else has questions. Where are my questions? Is this a joke? I mean, is this some kind of joke?" And she's like, "Sean, what are you talking about?" I said, "There are no questions on my test." "Well," she said, "yes, there are." And I said, "What?" And at that point, instead of me taking tests with the rest of the class, I had anxiety disorder with math because I was so charged and focused. So she allowed me to start taking the math exams in a room by myself where it was quiet. And now all of a sudden the teachers are starting to look at me and handle me in a different way. So when I became a teacher, I want you, man, look, I want you to work as hard as anybody else. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be here without teachers. And the things that teachers have done for me outside of what is expected is far more important than whatever I learned in class, right? So when you all have an issue, and you see it in my professor, he cares, he cares, he cares. But the reason I care, so many people did so many good things for me. Because truth of the matter is, without Mama Green, without those teachers, I wouldn't be here. I mean, it's pretty simple. Either I would have been ended or I'd have ended myself. And what happened was I just realized that there was so much more out there. So, like when I lecture on homicide, and I talk about suicide, and I talk about lethal violence, let me tell you something. There's nothing in no damn book that I'm going to read that I don't know, right? The only thing that I've learned is that what our perception of violent crime is, and what our perception of lethal crime is, or lethal behavior, is a lot different than what's portrayed in the news. Because, you know, I don't know what's taking place right now at the protests. I think they're still going on. Evidently, another African-American male was shot in Atlanta and killed in a brutal fashion, which is very dismaying. It's very disheartening. And I look at the media portrayal, the media portrayal of violence, right? And I think about what are the TV shows that students like to watch, like 48 Hours, right? You like to watch Criminal Minds, all these different shows that are about homicide. But there's a major problem with the information that you receive from the news. This is why I don't watch the news. I don't watch social media for news. I definitely don't turn on cable. I might flip on CNN for about 10 minutes once a year to see what's going on, because here's what I learned, right? There's no news today that's different than the news 10 years ago. It's all the same. It's all the freaking same. The only difference is the name in the story, okay? So when I started learning, and what that means is that behavior is patterned. If you go back, and I used to do this in my criminology class, and what I have them do is, okay, pick a number between 1 and 100, and they'd do it. And I say, you pick 50. So go back to the year 1970 and tell me what took place in terms of crime. What did crime look like? What did justice look like on your birthday in 1970? Right? And they come up with whatever. And typically they find out a story about murder. They find out a story about murder. Oh, what's up, Ray? Oh my, hey, Ray. Hey, Ray, man, I'm sitting back here chilling. I found my Lime shirt, so I'm gonna be wearing that thing tomorrow. What's up, Mark? What's up? So, my bro, that's my guy right there. Those are my guys. So, oh man, what was I talking about? Oh, so when you watch the media and you're paying attention to the media, they do something that's incredibly clever. They get you wondering, right? They get you thinking about, okay, why did they do it? Don't you do it? Don't you think that at home when you're watching TV? And then you do this one. Oh my God, this is the one that cracks me up more than anything. So I'm reading a criminology book on the bus or on the train or something like that. People say, oh, what you reading? I say, oh, some criminology book. They say, oh, okay. And they go, you know, I watched that show 48 hours. I say, oh, you do? They say, yeah, I get it right every time. I say, what'd you get? They say, I solve the crime every single time. Long before they do, and I'm like, you do? Oh my, maybe you should focus your life on being a crime scene investigator. You might get a great paying job. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, they make it look so freaking easy. Like, you're going to find a hair in a trash can in a dump, and you're going to be able to trace that hair in a landfill all the way back to a crime scene and find the murderer? Are you serious? Can't even find the keys in the morning. You're going to find that one hair way over here somewhere. Come on, man. It just doesn't work that way. So people have this thing that they want to solve these crimes because they want to know what was in the mind of the person that did the crime, right? And forget about it. There's a reason why they want you to focus on the mind, criminal minds. It's because if we focus on the crazy, if we focus on psychosis and sociopathology, then what we're really doing is looking at the small minority of people who climb up on top of a hotel and gun down 400 or 500 people. Yes, that's an important story. When someone goes into a school and they gun down 20 people, I hate it, okay? When Sandy Hook took place, my daughter Madison was in 2nd grade. All I can imagine were these 2nd graders being shot point blank by Adam Lenza. And I'm like, no, man. I said, okay, that is a very specific situation that is really important to understand. However, when we're focusing on what happened in the mind, it diverts our attention away from what the real patterns are. And let me tell you what, the real patterns are a lot more significant, are a lot more important, right? Because if it's true that in 1904, 1924, 1944, 2004, it's never that easy. If we go back at each period of time, they're always focusing on murder. And almost always they want to know the psychological reason why they did it. Baby, that's not it at all. Are you serious? Are you serious? Here's what I want to know. Here's what I want to know when I'm looking at murder. Alright? In lethal violence. I want to know what are the underlying structural forces at play. That's what I want to know. I want to know if you give me, alright, Jocelyn, there you go. There you go. Cassandra, I don't know what you're laughing at. But if definitely about the witness, okay? Definitely about the witness because we can't prosecute without a witness. Now watch this. If you give me the homicide, by the way, just a side note, just so you know the fact, right now the homicide rate in the United States is 5.5 per 100,000, all right? I don't know if that's high or if that's low. The all-time peak, 1930, 1980, 1992, was 10.4 per 100,000. So crime rotates between a maximum point and a minimum point. Maximum point and a minimum point. Yeah, they give a condensed story because we like everything to be packaged, right? So it's for easy consumption. We don't want to dig around and find out what the answer is. We want something that we can consume quickly. So if homicide has fluctuated between a maximum and a minimum point since 1930, all right? There's a lot of things that tells us, and we're about to go into a little bit of stream analysis, okay? If we want to understand why people kill, it's not that freaking hard, baby. Are you serious? It's not that hard. They're angry. Why are they angry? From alienation. Why do people get alienated? It's really easy. right? If you're looking at this from a conflict perspective, when there's economic unemployment or economic inequality, high levels of unemployment, failing education systems, a lack of structural mobility into the American dream, right? Certain persons, really, man, go home, Willie. Certain persons on the margins will express that anger towards somebody else, right? We learn to get angry, then we hate that person, we deface that person, dehumanize that person, it's easier to kill that person, right? And how do we know it's anger that drives murder and alienation? Because we get alienated from work. There's 4 levels of alienation according to Karl Marx, right? Alienation from society, alienation from work, alienation from self, and alienation from nature. So if all these kind of things are alienating us, then it expresses itself as outward anger. So when people kill, they are killing an external obstacle, something that they see as being the obstacle to them achieving either current success or long-term success, because it's a present orientation to success, right? How do I know this for a fact? Because when you take away stranger-related homicide from your analysis, which is driven by economic forces, because stranger-related homicide is almost always a felony murder in terms of a robbery or a drug type of situation. Very few people just walk up and cap somebody because they feel like capping them. It happens, but that's not typically what happens, all right? Usually it's a gang-related thing. 5% of all murders every year are gang. It's not 95, it's not 2%, it's 5, all the way across. 70% of all homicides happen with a handgun. Fine, okay, thank you. That means there's a structural thing to it, all right? So when we take a look at the homicide and anger, how do I know it? Because the majority of homicides that take place happen between acquaintances and an argument with friends. The second type is husbands killing wives, right? Wives killing husbands is way down like number 7. So there's also something about gender. What is it? Why is it men kill, right? Because 92% of the offenders who kill somebody else are men. 85% of the people who get killed are men. So what is it about manliness that brings people into a context in which lethal violence is an expression, right? So we have to take a look at gender. But they're not talking about gender on the media. They're not making any kind of emphasis discussing how males develop that masculine identity and how they're competitive over who has access to scarce resources during a battle within a particular context. They're not bringing that up, okay? So why aren't they bringing that up? Because as long as it's psychological, as long as we think it's psychological why people kill, we don't have to change the institution, right? If it's a psychological malady, we don't have to change the economic institution. That person made the choice. We don't have to change the education institution because that person made the choice. As long as we focus here. And here's what we know. All right? Oh, a functionalist interpretation of homicide, they would say that during periods of anomie, where there's massive breakdown or there's massive change in your institutional system, there will be a response in the aggregate that is violent. Right? So, unless there is massive institutional change, things will run pretty smoothly, right? So we are sitting now at the lowest point, one of the safest, testosterone perhaps, right? But even then it's still within a context to elicit and engage it. Sure, testosterone certainly plays a role, but so does the context that makes that testosterone kick off and pop off, right? So when we take a look at it, if you tell me, like we did this in Columbus, we drove down the homicide rate, because I had numbers to work with. We did it in Louisville, Kentucky. We drove it down 50%. And while most people here think Miami is such a violent place, Miami's homicide rate dropped from 2005 was 19.1 per 100,000, and it just now dropped to 9. It's over a 50% drop in the last 10 or 15 years. And most people believe that we live in the most dangerous city when the fact is we just do not. The homicide rate being 9.1 per 100,000 means that last year we had a record low, the lowest number of homicides in Miami since 1957 or 1967. There were 38 gun-related fatalities. All right, so the percentages are on target as far as percent of homicides that were executed with a gun. But if you take a look at that, right, most people are going to use a gun when? Between 16 and older. Kids, little kids don't get killed with guns. If you're under the age of 4, you're getting shaken to death. You're getting beaten to death with fists, blunt objects. But if it's older, that means that there's a different power dynamic, there's a different felonious dynamic, there's a different anger management system, and so firearms are used at that point in time. All these indicators tell us about crime, right? And it tells us why and how people behave. You give me numbers that tell me what the forces of production are, which is what? Education, economic inequality, unemployment, etc., etc. And then allow me to gauge forces of direction, which is culture. And I can guarantee you that I can drive down the homicide rate if you give me the resources to make it happen. Because so often the politicians are only giving lip service to it. Look, they're trying to get reelected. They're not trying to drive down crime rates. Because if they were trying to drive down crime rates, the research is widespread that the way you drive down crime rates is massive institutional change. If crime fluctuates between the maximum and minimum point, unless there's a massive institutional change, then you got to change the institutions. Because if the institutions shape the context by which you live, and it shapes your psychology and your psychological makeup, then the root of it all should be those systems. And if we don't change those systems, then what happens? Boom, people kill each other. By the way, if you take a look at suicide rates next to homicide rates, they are shaped by the same stream. Everyone, all of us in this computer screen, all of us are shaped by the same institutional forces. Our response to those forces is based upon our location within that system. In other words, our social location is determined by our social networks. Right? So if we can take a look at our social networks, then we can start to understand how people are embedded in the stream. And you're embedded through, remember we talked about social and cultural capital last week. If your social capital is one that is connected to those who have a higher odds of engaging in violent crime, then it's going to have an impact. If your cultural capital looks at present orientation of time, where I may not live to see tomorrow, the odds of you acting violently in a context are heightened, right? So we take a look at all these things, all these forces, and if there's anomie in the system where there's massive change, then we can take a look at what are the points of intersection that's going to trigger certain types of behavior, right? If there's more alienation, what are those triggers? Now the flip side is this. If the belief that I am invaluable, if there's a belief that I'm a failure, within this culture where we strive for the American dream, where we strive to achieve intergenerational mobility, right? If we fail, then we oftentimes direct it back towards ourselves. So when we kill ourselves, we're doing so because we believe we have failed. And a lot of people say, oh, that's really, it's selfish to do that. Well, I hadn't been down that road after my mom whacked me really good. And then it was crazy. 6 months later, Irma Jean tried to whack her in front of my eyes. And in between time, my mom's old boyfriend, the one that had molested me, was threatening my future stepfather with bodily harm if he ever tried to harm my mom after he had put his fist through the front door saying that she couldn't get a college degree. So I'm watching my mom try to whack me, Irma Jean tried to whack her. The one man is trying to tell my future father-in-law to stay away. And I'm like, this is crazy, man. Who's protecting who in this situation? But the stream is what's flowing. Your individual expression is your experience in the stream. So, when there's by the way, right? Lethal violence. Homicide, there were 14,000 homicides last year. 14,500 some, right? 32,000 suicides. 70,000 opioid overdoses. 75,000. So we're asking the question, why do murderers kill other people? Right? I think it's the wrong question. Because if 32,000 people killed themselves, and if 75,000 people died of overdose, I want to know this question. Why aren't we asking what's the root of the pain? Why are we saying, where is the pain and how can, see what I mean? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Where's the pain And how can we address the pain that people are experiencing? You're talking about the lady who drowned her son, and these kind of things just make my head explode, right? But there's a common pattern, right? Typically, when a parent, almost more than half are women who do it, great deal of stress, financial and economic disadvantage, and they can't work because of the fact that they can't travel to work, and we blame them for not working and taking care of the child. So they are caught in these scissors where the stress is so unbearable that oftentimes that child becomes the target of their anguish. My mom loved me, but I know for a fact that she would have shook me to death, and my mom wasn't crazy. My mom was just stressed out, right? Excuse my language. So, and she had this horrible history. So here's what we know. Remember I was talking about childhood trauma? Here it is. Here's your answer. Oh, here's the other thing. We like to look at crazy, but did you realize 50% of every homicide that takes place, both parties were intoxicated? Over half, right? Here's another fact. Suicide. Oh, it ticks me off too when these things happen. I mean, that's why I don't watch the news. I watch for the patterns. I don't want to see the individual events. The individual events break me down and they make me all emotional. But on the other hand, what was I saying? Oh, when someone kills themselves, oftentimes it's with alcohol. So why are we taking a look at alcohol as one of the reasons why people break down their ability to engage in self-talk and interpersonal communication? Why is that? Why aren't we talking about that? Why are we talking about men who are drinking, who are engaging in violence? So, they use the social lubricant so they can express their anger or what have you. Why aren't we talking about that? Why is that not on the topic? Why isn't that on the list of things that we want to know? Why aren't we talking about the pain that people are experiencing so that we can build a system that we can address their pain, right? I'll tell you why. It's really very simple. Because now I don't know what the rate is for people who kill another person, but I know this for a fact. If you take a look at childhood trauma, right, and 12% of the population has had 4 or more traumas. I had 7, man. 7 traumas. I had a father who committed suicide. He was incarcerated. He fled parole and moved to Florida. Everyone was addicted to alcohol. Lived in poverty. It wasn't abject poverty. It's not. I mean, I had clothes and we had food, but it was relative poverty where we didn't have as much as other people that were around. That kind of thing, right? So we were relative poverty, sexual assault, psychological assault, etc. Now here's what happens. Now watch this. I want to know why isn't this on the news, okay? Why isn't this something that we're reporting on? If you take a look at people who have 4 or more traumas, they are 150% more likely to become alcoholic, 300% more likely to be addicted to illegal drugs, a lot more likely to be addicted to prescription drugs. Then we start going on. They're much more likely to have a heart attack. They're much more likely to have breakdown. They're much more likely to have, now watch this, suicidal ideation. Yeah, this is true. I'm not making this stuff up. They are, 800% more likely to have suicidal ideation, and they are 1,600% more likely to complete a suicide attempt than those who have less than 4 childhood traumas, right? And I'd imagine that those who engage in homicide is probably a similar type of backdrop. So here's my question. Why then aren't we looking at childhood trauma as the root of our lethal violence problem? Because if we had to take a look at what's the root of childhood trauma, now we got to re-examine where does stress come from? Where does abuse come from? Where does addiction come from, right? Now we got to take a look at what are the institutional forces that shape people into these behavior patterns. Then we have to take a look at why don't we have conflict management classes going all the way back to kindergarten? When I was in kindergarten, Glenda Washington hit me down the middle of the head with a saw. Because why? Because I wanted to play in the toolbox with her and Richie Taptegan and Kevin Cornell. Are you serious? So I hit a saw down the middle of my head, and when it got stuck, it went boing like that. No one called the police. No one said anything, right? What's this about? Why don't we have conflict management? So that we can have a different language system in how to manage our anger. Because think about this for a second. Think about this. Some of us have been assaulted by the people that love us. Some of us have been in a domestic situation where we have been hit, pinched, punched, pushed by the people that we're dating. right? And we don't see it as on a continuum to homicide. Well, if you take a look at it, it is a violent act. And in doing so, if we took a look at the patterns of what underlies these type of things, we would have to change the social institutions, don't you see? If we change the education institution, how much money would that cost? How much money? What if we redesign the whole entire labor force towards one that is more creative and based upon entrepreneurship than it is based upon just filling a job so you can get paid $9.25 an hour? What if we redesign the whole entire labor force, right, so that you had access into your own greatness? That's because the people who have power don't want to change the system. They don't want to change the media system. They don't want to change the economic system. They just want to give it lip service because it costs too much money for them to do it. They can't see the value unless they get hit in the pocketbook. So watch this. So instead, the media focuses on the mind, but not the patterns. Because focusing on the patterns would require us to change the very system that we live in. Point blank, over, done, nothing else. Unless there's a massive institutional change. And there's two changes that have taken place that have driven down our homicide rate. Two of them. One is the aging of the population. Now that the average age, with the baby boomers coming through, right, the average age of the population has gone up. So if most people, if the, not the median, if the mode category of homicide takes place between 16 and 29 years old. Really it's 21 to 29. And that's what I tell you is economic stress, because the modal category for a person who kills and gets killed, is 19 to 29. That's the modal category. That's what? When high school ends, that's when you're supposed to have a job, that's when you're supposed to be in a relationship, that's when you're starting to, things start changing right there, right? So now all of a sudden you can't fit into that system. You're experiencing anomie, experiencing alienation, and what happens? You find that situation, and boom, there's an explosion, right? Now watch. The rate of homicide is 5.5 per 100,000. It should be higher, and there's a reason it's not. And the reason it's not is, one, we've aged. The baby boomers are now retiring. And your generation is actually saving us, because as far as violent crime is going, because your routine behaviors have changed. And what that means is this: you don't go out and play in public like we used to. You're more likely to game, you're more likely to text, you're more likely to communicate using technology like GC, what's that, group chat? More likely to group chat WhatsApp and ride bikes and then go to the neighbor's house and say, come on man, let's go. And you don't even knock on the door, you're just yelling, hey man, come on, let's go play baseball. And then here comes everybody, right? So that's a massive routine behavioral change that has affected crime rates. And you put that in on top of age structure, then what happens, it suppresses the level of homicide. But watch this. Okay, this is how this stuff works, right? But because those baby boomers are now approaching retirement, which I was 2 weeks away from being a boomer, I'm a Gen X, suicide happens for people who are 45 to 54. That's the highest rate. So if now the population is getting older and they're in that category for lethal violence, watch this. The rate of suicide is going to go up. And has it? Yes. So suicide has gone up and homicide has gone down. Now watch this. I'm about to blow your minds away, baby. Your mind is about to explode right now. Since the majority of suicides that take place with a firearm, and 70% take place with homicides take place with a firearm. Watch this. Your mind's about to get blown, baby. You watching? You watching? The most lethally violent group in America are white males aged 45 to 54. Because they're the ones most likely to kill themselves with a gun. So, when we're thinking in terms of gun control, when do we ever have the vision that we're talking about white males 45 to 50 years old? We have an image of violent crime at the hands of African American men, but the men who are most violent are white males. Oh, by the way, who holds power in society? 45 to 54-year-old white males. Who holds educational power? Same group. Who holds taxability power? Same group. Who holds political offices? Same group. Who holds the CEO jobs? Same group. Same group. Who controls the media? Same group. So do you really think that that group who has the power is going to shed or shift the spotlight on themselves? Or are they going to portray other weaker groups as the ones that are a greater threat? And there you have it. The reason why our crime control policies are distorted. And the reason why we don't look at lethality the way it is. Now, one last thing. Whew, man. I don't know about the QEP, baby. Just give it to me whenever. All right? I'll grade them next weekend, or this weekend. I'm focused on writing this paper. I have a ton to do. I apologize to you all. You're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. You're likely to get an A or a B or something like that. So as long as you've submitted it, you're good. Marvin Wolfgang, in his research called the Delinquency in a Birth Cohort, he watched 10,000 people born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and these findings have been replicated over and over and over and over again. But what he did was he traced the criminal careers of 10,000 kids born that year. And what he found was, and this is the most important finding that you're ever going to get in criminology or anything, right? Okay, so I'm a little wound up tonight, don't ask me why. So what he did is he tracked a cohort, everybody who was born at that same time. You're welcome. I'm not stressing. I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling laid back. Every time I get to work with students, I just chill the hell out. And so here's what he found. Now watch this. Now I threw a lot at you tonight. So think in terms of childhood trauma. Think in terms of forced reproduction. Think in terms of the stream and all those things. But here's something else I want you to really think about. Think about this. That 5%, there's 5% that account for 51% of all arrests. So there's a handful of people who have been arrested 5 or more times, and they account for 50% of all arrests. All arrests. They account for 65% of all burglary arrests. They account for 72% of robbery arrests, and they account for 92% of homicide arrests. Now look at what that means. What that means is this. You have a small handful of people whose odds are super high of becoming a violent offender and victim, right? Typically, childhood trauma has been a deep root of the chronic offender's life. And you put them in a stream with other chronic offenders, and we don't change the flow of the stream because we don't want to attack the economic and education system. So what happens is, while these groups are flowing in the same stream, they go after one another. Routine activities theory says so, right? And so, when we look at gun control and crime control, we're not even looking at the right questions. We're looking at a story on TV, which, that's fine. I mean, I'm not saying that those stories aren't important. But if we really want to get down to it, what do we do to address the issue of chronicity? And here's the last thing. Oh, God. Whew, I got a bandana on. I'm sweating. Okay, all right. So, all right. Because I haven't got a haircut yet. I'm busier now than when I work, man. I told my boss, I said, let me go back to work so I don't have to work so much. There's a thing called the age crime curve. And what that is basically crime peaks for burglary around the lambda, which is the individual crime rate. Right? We all have an individual crime rate from 0 to infinity. So we all have an individual crime rate. Burglary and property crime peak at 16. Violent crime peaks, I can't do this stuff on the camera, at the age of 18 at a lower level and later, right? But the rate of crime by age never goes to 0. And the reason it can never go to 0, right? This is why we should be happy if the homicide rate ever gets down to where it is now, because it's saying that there's some kind of structural stability in our system. All right, so if you take a look at why doesn't it ever go to 0, is because the people who were there that made it peak, right, at 16 and 18 years old, because they have a chronic lifestyle, a criminal lifestyle, they continue a life of crime much later, right? So at every point, the chronic offenders have a higher lambda than the regular population, and it becomes more divergent over time, okay? So here's the question. Here's the question. If the line starts at 16, it's likely it didn't start at 16 at all. It's likely that the behavior and opportunities and the development of a criminal lifestyle probably happened way back, probably before the age of 6 and 8. So if it happened between 6 and 8, then chronicity is something that we need to address by 6 years old, right? Not later. So here's what you do. Man, this stuff is so easy, it just drives me crazy. I just don't understand why we can't fix this stuff. Conflict management programs in schools right off the bat. And if you as an individual want to protect your kids from, when you have them, from suicidal ideation, from criminal ideation later, the easiest freaking solution in the stream. You sit your baby on your knee every day for 1 hour or more. Every single day, even if they can't do it, and you read to your kids. You read every single day, and something magical is going to happen. And this is why it's so important. 1, you're developing the cultural capital of the upper middle class. That is the language system, right? So that constant reading, everyone read to me when I was a kid. I read to my kids for sure, every day. What happens is you develop that cultural capital, that language system for upward mobility. That's the first thing. Second thing that happens is that it allows that parent and that child to have that special long-term bond, such that the communication between the two is much less likely to be built around violence than it is to be built around cooperation and sharing in this reading exercise. So the reading, it strengthens the social control bonds between parent and child, but it also allows that child to enter into the stream with a language system that's going to allow them to advance. And if we do that widespread, then the impact is going to be in the aggregate. It's going to be significant. But no one wants to listen to me because they just figure, old dudes sitting around talking. I am, and I'm not. But here's what I am. I am a guy who had 7 traumas. I am a guy who was violated. I'm a guy who was exposed to all the violent language you could have. But I was also a guy who came out on the other side pretty darn good, pretty darn well. And the combination of having witnessed lethal violence, right, but also being trained in understanding how institutional forces and interactional forces work all at the same time, it's equipped me to do things for communities, for individuals, and for myself that others just don't have because you can't bridge experience with academia. It's really hard to do. And it just so happened I got lucky that way. And here's all I'm saying. All this just to say this. If you turn in a paper late, really? That's the worst thing that's going to happen to me or to you today? Are you serious? Let me work with you. I want them on time because it becomes a logistical nightmare trying to keep it. But some of you are going through things that I can't imagine. Right? Some of you are going through things that you won't share with anybody else. You won't share with me. You won't share with your family. You won't share with whomever. And many of you have walked the same path that I'm walking, that I walked, and that I'm still walking. The reason why I named my company Hope Works is because even when all else is gone, if you have hope, you can always stand back up again. Right? You can always get back up. And if you can get back up, you can walk. And if you can walk, you can run. Unless you can't because you got a broken bone or something like that, you can always keep moving forward. So all these things, yes, it is hard. It is hard having teenagers. I can't, I haven't, but it has been very smooth with me and my kids. But I will say that it's tough, right? So that's the long answer to a short question, right? The short question was, if I'm late, can I still turn my paper in? The long answer was, yes. Right? What I'd like to do, if you're late on anything, make sure you submit it by Sunday. Right? Because I'm not going to be grading them hard. You've been under a lot of stress and duress doing this stuff from home. I'm surprised this live stream didn't cut off like 92 times. But I hope you got something from it. Right? On Thursday, I'd like to have your questions. Just questions to ask me about Dear Mama, the book, so that I can answer them. That's what I'll base my lecture on next Tuesday. We do not have a lecture this Thursday. We don't. Just this one. So work on your other stuff, catch up, do those kind of things. I am going to do a video for next week. I'm thinking about doing 6 10-minute videos on how to invest and how to build your financial house. So that will be coming. I think that is like super, super, super important. And you know, at the end of the semester, I always tell my students in the aggregate that I love you, right? Not as an individual, because I can get in all kind of trouble for that. But in the aggregate, I always say that. And the reason is because you actually give me a circular fulfillment in that I can give back to the teachers that gave me so much along the way, right? And so teaching has always meant something. That's why live teaching means so much, because one thing you don't know, because you can't tell by looking at me sitting here in this chair, is that I'm very good at reading their vibrations, you know, how they're feeling. I can read their facial expression. I can read them really well because Mama Green taught me how to do it. And I can just say that, I can just say, Mark, you're welcome. I can just say that I do that because I was always taught to love and not hate. Never judge, never hate, unless you've walked in someone else's shoes. Yeah, you can. Just email me the questions. That's fine. And in the subject line, put down "Dear Mama" questions, because I don't want to get stuff lost and mixed up because you're doing your work and then all of a sudden I lose them because I've opened it and forgot to save it as unread or whatever. Too complicated. So if you put in the subject line "Dear Mama" questions, that'd be good. And I hope you've enjoyed reading it. It is a very intense book, but you're going to need some tissues when you get to the end of that one, baby. Because I can never read the end of that book without the last chapter. I can't read it without crying every single time. I'm crying now thinking about it. So I do. I love you as a class, and I really wish you well. Again, if you need something, now I'm under a lot of burden right now with, oh my God, papers everywhere, and I still got all this writing I got to do. Oh my God, it's just, I've written 70 pages. I think I still have 70 left to write, and I have to have it done Friday. So that's one. So that gives me, I have to write basically 22 pages a day for the next 3 days, and then edit the whole thing Saturday morning. Oh boy. Okay, so anyhow, done. I won't spoil it. I want to thank you all for a great evening. I really enjoy. Hey, Kristen, how is it? Let's see, chapter 19. How have you enjoyed it so far? Let me see where you are. Wait till you read chapter 20. Oh my God. You're about to get into the good stuff now. Thanks, Danielle. You know, I really hope sincerely that we all get a chance to have a live class together. I also really would like to do a Zoom for the exam, just one-on-one or as a group or whatever, because I really miss that I don't get to meet you guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, I see these itty-bitty little photos next to your name. I can't decide what that is. But hopefully someday we get to. And hopefully when I start getting my professional speaking stuff going, where I get to do the motivational speeches, you will stay with me. Thank you, Roxanne. That you will stay with me on YouTube and friend me on Facebook. I had to change my name on Facebook back to Shawn Schwaner. I forgot that none of you know who Sean Lewis is. So you're welcome, Aurelia. So you can friend me on Facebook, and that way you can keep track of things as they go on. And if you subscribe on YouTube, when I do something, put a new video on, I think you get a notification or something like that. But I really want to start staying in touch with you all as I head towards the horizon of my career, as I head to the sunset, so to speak. I work more now than I used to, but I sure do want to know how everything turns out for you. Okay? Thank you, guys. Anyhow, did you like those stories tonight? Did you like those? I kind of held back a little bit, but don't worry. I'll work with you. I'll take care of you. You need something, I'm here, and I'm going to teach you next week the investments, teach you how to do the investments and things like that. All right, well, I'm hot. I got to go get something to eat so I can type off about 20 pages tonight before I go to bed. I don't feel like leaving because I've had too much fun this evening. But anyhow, we laughed, we cried. We've experienced a full life in one class period. Okay, everybody. I'm going to save this to YouTube and good. All those yeses. Beautiful. You've been great. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. If you need me, you can text me, and we're going to keep, oh God, you guys, I'm going to cry. I don't even, on Facebook, this is me on Facebook, it's just my name. There's only one Shawn Schwaner on planet Earth. You don't have to worry about running into another one. And then on Instagram, I don't use Instagram so much, but I use it periodically. I think I might go to Lime. Ray, are you still here? Ray Kata, he works at Lime. It'd be great to see him. Lime, what's up? Okay, I'm going to get some food. Thanks, Mark. You all have a great night. Call me if you need me. A friend of yours needs me, get in contact with me. And if anybody needs to get their financial house in order, I will definitely do it. I don't need the income, so I can tell them honestly what they need, rather than trying to sell something so I can take care of my need. I don't need the income. I'm just trying to help people out. All right. This week you should say thank you to somebody that made a difference in your life. You should do that at least once a month, and it keeps that torch burning. And we all deserve to have that greatness burn for the rest of our lives. I'll see you next Tuesday. If you have questions, please contact me.